Hi learners, welcome to another mini lesson. We're still in the female reproductive system. This time we're going to talk about obstetrics, pregnancy, and childbirth. This is a very quick overview. We could spend a whole semester talking about this topic, but we're going to cover just this small little part of the chapter. So let's begin with conception and fertilization and implantation. So after ovulation, an ovum or egg cell must be fertilized by the sperm cell within 24 hours in order to survive. Fertilization usually takes place in the distal third portion of the uterine tube, and fertilization simply means the process where a sperm and ovum unite. Once the sperm and ovum unite, the result is called a zygote. The zygote divides and grows and transforms into something called a blastocyst. The blastocyst then travels to the uterus and burrows into the endometrium. This process is called implantation. Cells from the blastocyst differentiate into different layers, and then some of those layers, together with the endometrial cells, form the placenta. And the placenta is the organ that allows the exchange of oxygen and nutrients between the mother and the fetus. Twins are produced in two different ways. Dizygotic twins result from the release of two eggs from the ovaries that are fertilized by two separate sperm. Remember, the prefix di means two. The twins can be different sexes and are only as genetically similar as any other siblings would be. Monozygotic twins are formed when one single egg is fertilized and a single blastocyst divides into two, each producing an embryo. Remember, mono means one, so here we're talking about one egg that divides into two. So these twins share a single placenta and are genetically identical. They're the same sex and they look very similar. An embryo is defined as the developing organism from the time of conception until the end of week 8 or the second month after development. After that, we use the term fetus, so from week 8 until birth. The placenta is a mass of tissue that increases in size as the pregnancy progresses and provides a lifeline between the mother and the fetus. The placenta is connected to the unborn baby by the umbilical cord, which contains two arteries and one vein. The maternal and fetal circulation is separated by cells called chorionic villi. However, there's an exchange of gases, nutrients, and waste products. The placenta has several functions: transportation of nutrients like glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, and minerals from the mother to the fetus, removal of nitrogenous waste like ammonia, urea, and creatinine from the fetus to the mother so the mother can excrete them, transportation of oxygen from the mother to the fetus and removal of carbon dioxide from the fetus so the mother can excrete it, and providing maternal antibodies to the fetus, and secretion of maternal hormones from the mother to the fetus. In addition to all these positives of maternal-fetal circulation, it does have some negatives, because many undesirable substances can cross the placenta as well, including medications, viruses and bacteria, along with alcohol, nicotine, and carbon monoxide from smoking, along with drugs like heroin and cocaine, which can all have negative effects on the fetus. Okay, so let's talk about some pregnancy terminology because there's a lot. In a previous video, we used the term abortion, and abortion simply means the termination of a pregnancy. It could either be spontaneous or induced. The term embryo refers to conception until week 8. The term fetus we use from week 8 until birth. The term gravida, often used with a number to indicate the number of pregnancies a woman has had. Para is a prefix we use to refer to the number of deliveries the woman has had. The length of a pregnancy is referred to as gestation and is considered to be 40 weeks, which is generally the time from a woman's last menstrual cycle to birth. Gestation is divided into trimesters. Remember, the prefix tri means 3. So the first trimester is up to week 12, the second trimester is week 13 to 24, and the third trimester is week 25 to birth. During fetal development, at around the 4th month, the fetus is covered with a soft downy hair called lanugo. At around the 5th month, the skin is covered with a protective cheesy substance called vernix caseosa. At 38 weeks, the baby is considered full term and ready for birth. Some more terms that you may see documented, these have to do with gravida and para, so you may only see these when you're dealing with pregnant patients. A pregnant woman is described as gravid or gravida. If it is her first pregnancy, she is described as a primigravida, and if she has had more than one pregnancy, she is a multigravida. You may also see it written as gravida and then number. For example, if it's her second pregnancy, it will be written as gravida 2. Parity refers to the outcome of the pregnancy, or number of deliveries after 20 weeks. So, for example, if a woman gives birth to a child after 20 weeks, she would be described as gravida 1, para 1. When reading or documenting referring to pregnancy, abortus refers to the loss of pregnancy before the 20th week. So, for example, if the woman was pregnant once but lost the baby before 20 weeks, she would be described as gravida 1, para 0, AB 1. So here's another example. Let's say a woman was pregnant twice and delivered 2 babies after 20 weeks. Her gravity would be documented as gravida 2, para 2. This documents that she had no pregnancy loss. Remembering a miscarriage can also be called a spontaneous abortion. So there's no need to document the AB or abortus number. So here's another example. If you saw the documentation, gravida 3, para 2, AB 1, what do you know about this woman? You can tell that she was pregnant 3 times, she gave birth to 2 children after 20 weeks, and she lost 1 pregnancy before 20 weeks. So don't worry, there's no questions on your test about this, but I thought your book was a little confusing on the issue and you may see documentation in practice about it. Okay, let's move on to some hormones of pregnancy. Human chorionic gonadotropin is the hormone secreted by the placenta and the embryo. The presence of HCG in the mother's blood or urine is used early in pregnancy as the basis of pregnancy tests because it can be detected as early as 10 days after conception. Estrogen stimulates the uterine and breast enlargement in the mother. It also softens ligaments in the pelvis to help make it more flexible so that the pelvic outlet can widen during childbirth. In a small percentage of pregnant women, it can also cause pelvic instability and pelvic pain. Progesterone is secreted by the placenta and the corpus luteum. It prevents ovulation, menstruation, and uterine muscle contraction during pregnancy. You don't want uterine muscle contraction during pregnancy. You don't want the uterus to contract until labor. So if the uterus starts to contract while the mom is pregnant before labor, that can cause premature delivery, and we don't want that to happen. So progesterone prevents uterine muscle contraction during pregnancy. Follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH, and luteinizing hormone, or LH, is secreted by the pituitary gland in the brain and stimulates the maintenance of the corpus luteum, which produces estrogen and progesterone. So all of these hormones are really important in supporting and maintaining pregnancy. Ooh, we are really fast-tracking the pregnancy and childbirth portion of this chapter. Like I said, we could spend an entire semester talking about pregnancy and childbirth, and you have like one video that's a few minutes long. So we are moving right along to labor and childbirth. So labor is defined as the process of expulsion of the fetus, and expulsion just means to push out or remove. Labor is divided into 3 stages. The first stage involves dilation of the cervix. Dilation just means to widen, and this is the longest stage of labor. During the first stage, the cervix also becomes thinner, and the process of the cervix becoming thinner is called effacement. During this stage, the fetal membranes, or the amniotic sac, will rupture, and the amniotic fluid is released. If this doesn't happen on its own, the healthcare provider, can rupture the membranes because the amniotic fluid needs to be released. If the healthcare provider has to do this, it's called an artificial rupture of membranes, which is abbreviated AROM, and that's not in your book, but you may see that in practice. The second stage of labor is the expulsion of the fetus, and the uterus will continue to contract, and pain will continue because of the stretching of the cervix and the vagina by the fetal head. When the head reaches the vaginal opening, it's said to be crowning. An episiotomy may be performed, which is just a surgical incision of the vulva to widen the opening and prevent tearing of the tissue. After the baby is delivered, the umbilical cord is clamped and cut. Then the third stage of labor occurs after the baby is delivered and the uterus continues to contract and push the placenta off the uterine wall and out of the vagina. Usually only takes about 15 minutes. If the uterus is not expelled after 30 minutes, it's said to have been retained, and it may have to be manually removed by the healthcare provider. The 6 weeks after birth are called the postpartum period, or the puerperium. During this time, the uterus shrinks in size, and that process is called involution. The vaginal discharge that occurs during this time is called lochia. All right, and I think that's like the quickest overview ever of conception, pregnancy, and childbirth. I tried to cover just the highlights because this chapter is really big. So I tried to cover everything that I think is going to be on your exam. And that's it. So the next video will cover disorders of pregnancy and procedures. And as always, I thank you for your attention.